Hello, hello. So I am making another video of a book review. So this one is also Dostoevsky. This one is called The Idiot by Dostoevsky. Now this book is so deep that I actually do have a cheat sheet for this one. The last video was off the cuff. This one is still going to be off the cuff for the most part, but I'm going to reference this quite a few times. So The Idiot by Dostoevsky, it's a really, really good book. I really liked this book. It's quite a long book. I didn't love it at first, up until around 70% of the way through. Then I really started liking the book. But Myshkin, so he has epilepsy. He was in Switzerland, and he just came back from a clinic in Switzerland and came back to Russia. So Prince Myshkin is like a Messiah-like figure, but still not Messiah, still not Christ, but a figure that tries to emulate Christ, right? So he tries to live his life Christ-like. He is always doing good, and he always has good intentions, good motives, and for the most part, the outcomes are pretty good for the most part. And he always forgives very, very expediently. He forgives people super quick, pretty much as soon as something happens, instantly he forgives them. It's crazy. And Rogozin is the first person that we meet that is a somewhat like adversary kind of character. So Rogozin, that literally means horns in Russian. So if that doesn't tell you anything about it, I don't know what will. So Rogozin is obviously not a great character. His name literally means horns. We have a Christ-like figure and we have a horns figure, so do with that what you will. But he basically, Rogozin, had inherited a fortune, and he loves a woman named Nastasia Filippovna. And Prince Myshkin also meets Nastasia Filippovna. And there's a third person, Ganya. So Ganya actually likes Nastasia. Nastasia does not like Ganya at all. So long story short, Myshkin basically shows up to a royal family in Russia. They're wondering what it's about, if they want to have like some type of familial connection, some type of borrowing of money, or inheriting something like that. And Myshkin is like, nah, I just want to hang out and make some friends. So it's kind of funny. It just starts off very different than most books would. But basically, yeah, he just shows up to the royal family and he's like, I just want to hang out with you guys. And they let him in. They explain each other's backgrounds, and they are put off by it at first, for sure. But eventually, they end up talking. They open up to him, basically, to an extent. They asked him about Switzerland. This was a whole scene in and of itself. But they asked him about Switzerland, and when they asked him about it, they're like, what was your coolest experiences there? What did you see? Did you see, like, the mountains, the Alps? Like, what did you see there? And he just kept being fixated on a donkey. And no matter how many times I would ask him about everything else in Switzerland, he just kept referring to a donkey. He's like, I was by a mountainside and there was a donkey, and it was the coolest donkey I've ever seen. It was such a cool donkey. And it goes on for like, I think it was like 15 pages just talking about a donkey. And I'm like, what is going on here? So it was really, really weird. But I never thought about it until recently. But it is kind of funny. So Jesus actually rode a donkey into Jerusalem. So being a Christ-like figure, it's kind of like his gateway in, kind of, is like on a donkey or through a donkey or referencing a donkey. So it's kind of similar in that way. It's not exactly copy-paste, but it's similar. It's like going to this high-up place, this place of important people, and being, I wouldn't say Myshkin's lowly necessarily, but the things he focused on were lowly compared to what the other people focused on. They focused on power, money, family, like all these different things, like politics to an extent. And he just liked a donkey. Very simple. So there's a lot to this book. And that's why this page is so dense, full of notes. But there's just a lot. So he being Prince Myshkin, he is called an idiot or a holy fool, where he appears naive, but he really exposes corruption, by not really participating along with society and the things that are expected. Usually if you want to talk to royalty, there's like a whole series of things you have to do. You have to schedule in advance. You have to have some type of connection that gets you into the main connection and all this stuff. And it's like a perceived naivety, but it's actually really, really intellectual. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's almost like playing a part of naivety seeing if people tried to like take advantage or, you know, just screw you over essentially, and kind of gauging where you're at from there. Except for he doesn't even have that part of the judgment part. He just is somewhat naive, but he is somewhat intelligent at the same time. It's like an odd mix. Um, so in 1 Corinthians 4:10, it says, "We are fools for Christ's sake, but you are wise in Christ." And it says that in the Bible, that we are to love Christ and through Christ get wisdom. I mean, you know the whole story of the wisdom of Solomon, where Solomon just asked for wisdom and everything was bestowed upon him. So, Myshkin, he forgives everybody instantly. He doesn't judge ever. He shows compassion to the fallen, but he can't carry the sins of others, nor can his goodness save society. So he's not able to really help the whole world in the same way that Jesus could, because again, Myshkin isn't Jesus. He wants to be like Jesus, he wants to portray Jesus, live out Jesus' love, but he's not Jesus. He is just a human. He's just a human. So he basically tries to take on the weight of the world to an extent, and he basically crumbles under it to an extent, or at least his psyche does. So Nastasia, the woman that everybody seems to have like a big fancy for, she is a broken person. She flips a lot. One second she'll act as if she's royalty because she is royalty. The next second she'll go out and get drunk and just fall around wherever she's at. She's also abused, but she loves purity. She likes the idea of purity. She likes the thought of purity, but she doesn't think that she's worthy of purity. So when Myshkin, who is supposed to be essentially purity in a human form, talks to her and approaches her, she feels like she's not good enough to be around him or to talk to him, to even be in the same room as him, that it freaks her out actually, and she like runs off quite a few times away from him, and Rogozin chases Nastasia, and the two of them kind of do their own little thing. But basically she goes back and forth between Rogozin and Prince Myshkin. So basically Prince Myshkin is grace and forgiveness, whereas Rogozin is self-destruction, and she kind of goes back and forth between the two. She knows that grace exists, but she doesn't feel like it's for her, though. She feels like there's not grace for her specifically. So it's just really interesting. So eventually, Myshkin's purity actually drives Rogozin insane, and Rogozin tries to kill Myshkin. He actually pulls out a blade and like a knife, and he was gonna kill Myshkin. Myshkin immediately goes into a seizure, and all of a sudden Rogozin feels bad about, trying to kill somebody that's innocent, and he doesn't end up following through. So he is seizing up. He calls the medical people and calls out for the medical people, and basically Prince Myshkin ends up in the hospital. And the second that Prince Myshkin wakes up and he sees Rogozin, the second that happens, Rogozin is like, "Hey, how's it going, Prince Myshkin?" Prince Myshkin immediately, "Hey, I forgive you for that, by the way." He's like, "Forgive me for what?" "Oh, weren't you going to try to kill me with the knife?" And he's like, "Huh? How did you know that? How do you remember that? What are you talking about?" And he's like, "No, it's no worries. It's water under the bridge. All good." And that's insane. That is crazy. That's the part where, he's called the holy fool, the idiot. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. I mean, it's great to be able to forgive like that. We're called to do so. That is so difficult to do in reality. That is so difficult. So when you read about it, it just sounds so far out there, So Rogozin doesn't necessarily love Nastasia. He's more obsessed. It's almost like an OCD, like a obsessive compulsive thing with her, and a little bit of like a control issue with her. He doesn't really love her. He doesn't really have any sacrifice for her. She doesn't really have sacrifice for him. They don't really love each other. It's just kind of like convenient, and more so Rogozin just being obsessive of the hot and cold of Nastasia, and I guess it's just like the emotional roller coaster. It's like I suppose dopaminergic. But basically he just kind of wants to exert power and pride, compared to Myshkin, which is the opposite, which is just humbleness, essentially, just humble graciousness. So Myshkin, by the way, so Rogozin, that means horns in Russian. Well, Mysh, from Myshkin, Mysh means small mouse. So it's pretty interesting there. So Myshkin actually gives Nastasia a lot of grace and forgiveness, but she doesn't know how to accept that. She doesn't think she deserves it, as I said before, but she doesn't know how to accept it either. Even at some points where she feels like she might be able to be close to purity. She still doesn't feel like she can accept that fully. And as foretold, a few different times in the book, throughout the book, I mean, even with the knife at Myshkin, Rogozin, spoiler alert, will murder Nastasia. And throughout the book, you get to know that all three of them know about it. Nastasia knows she's going to get murdered, as far as I can tell, just from reading between the lines in the book. Nastasia knows that something bad is going to happen, that Rogozin is going to continue to be abusive, and it's going to get worse and worse, and to the point where it's going to kill her. Myshkin knows that for a fact after seeing what happened, but he tries not to be judgmental about it. Although I will say, if he was more judgmental about it, maybe Nastasia wouldn't have gotten killed, but... And Rogozin obviously knew that he was going to kill somebody. He was really bent on that. So, eventually, towards the end of the book, Rogozin shows Myshkin the body of Nastasia, and Myshkin doesn't judge. He's just more shocked than anything, but Rogozin starts crying, he starts acting manic, he's pacing around the room, he's yelling, crying, laughing, he's going manic, essentially. And Myshkin is the calmness there. Myshkin calms him down, tells him to sit down, lay down. He's with him. He's talking to him, trying to comfort him. He says, I completely forgive you. It's no worries. Even though Nastasia was who Myshkin really liked. He also liked another woman too, but Nastasia was a big forefront of it. Even still, he just forgave him, said it's all good, water under the bridge, which is shocking. That is shocking. But basically, they kind of just shared horror and grief the whole night together. But again, Myshkin isn't Christ. You know, he wants to emulate Christ, which is great. We should emulate Christ. But he's not Christ. He can't handle the weight of the world. So he basically mentally collapses and lives all of the rest of his life in a sanatorium. And then Rogozin was arrested, and society basically just continues as normal, as if nothing significant happened. And it's left that way very intentionally. But there's a quote at the end of the book, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's something along the lines, for people who have high empathy, high compassion, something along those lines, the only safe place for them in the world is a sanatorium, that the world isn't safe for them. And that's a pretty interesting thing. But basically, the world can't handle goodness and actively tries to destroy it. I mean, you see that in the New Testament. You see that in the story of Christ. Christ comes, he is fully God, he is fully man, two natures, one being, one essence, and he did no wrong. He committed absolutely no sin his entire life. No sin at all. And he was good. He helped people. He did miracles, obviously. I mean, he made people that were blind to be able to see. He made people that were crippled and unable to walk be able to stand, walk, run. Literally a miracle worker. Like, he is a miracle worker. Perfect. But people still, they couldn't handle that, because when they see perfection, they see everything that they're not. And instead of saying, hey, maybe I'll try to live up to that, in Myshkin's case, Myshkin tried to do that, but other than that, most people see that, and they see what they wish they could be, and everything that they want to be, but they're not, and how they've fallen short, and how they missed the target, essentially. So, instead of saying, I want to be like that, I want to, I wouldn't say appropriate, but I'd like to act out in this manner, instead of all of that, they want to destroy it, because it's a reflection of themselves. So they would rather not have that in the first place, so that way they would have nothing to compare to, than to have perfection, or even good, just good. So that is pretty interesting. Something else, Christ in Gethsemane, it's very similar to this, because Christ was in Gethsemane, Peter drew a sword, and Christ allowed himself to be taken. In a similar way, with Rogozin and Myshkin, Myshkin was there with Rogozin in private. Rogozin drew a sword, a knife, and basically, I mean, he had a seizure, but if it was up to him, I don't think he would have fought back. I don't think Myshkin would have. I mean, immediately he forgave him. He didn't have any grudge, any judgment, anything at all. I think he was basically laying his life down in the same way that Christ laid his life down. But again, Christ is Christ. Myshkin is just a man. But Myshkin says, again, it's better... this is a weird thing later in the book. So Myshkin, this was odd. So obviously Dostoevsky, being Russian, he was Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. Orthodoxy, it's awesome, love it. That's the East. On the West, you had Catholicism. The whole schism in 1054, that's a whole other video. But you have Catholicism in the West. The East like to maintain tradition. They still like to maintain tradition. The West seemed to change a lot. They ended up having the Pope, which is a different type of authority. Instead of having the Pope over just Rome or even just Italy, or the Vatican, they had him over all of the Christians. They thought he was the one guy that all of the Christians report to, and he's the leader of all the Christians on earth, on the Church Militant. And they still believe that, the Catholics today. The Orthodox, on the other hand, don't believe that necessarily. They believe in something called an autocephaly, where every land has their own leaders, and it keeps going up like hierarchy. So you have like a city leader, maybe a tri-city leader that happens to. Then you have like a state leader in some cases. Then you have an entire country leader. And every country has their own leader. So the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church is different than, let's say, the Azerbaijan Orthodox Church, which is different than Polish Orthodox Church. They all have different archdioceses. So that being the case, Dostoevsky, being Orthodox, not liking that there's one central power with Catholicism, liking that there's different powers that keep each other in check in the autocephaly, he actually says, I'm going to paraphrase, but Myshkin says, through Dostoevsky, Myshkin says it's better to be an atheist than to be Catholic, that Rome chose kingdoms and politics instead of the cross. They replaced the cross with authority. So they essentially say, yeah, we believe in God, but here's why you should follow us, which is a huge difference compared to Orthodoxy. In Orthodoxy, there's a whole concept called theosis. This is a lot of where Prince Myshkin kind of harkens back to, is theosis. It's trying to be one with God, one with Christ, trying to be a good follower. I wouldn't say Ubermensch, but trying to be a good follower of Christ, trying to be Christ-like. And a lot of that just goes back to Myshkin. So Myshkin, trying to be the good person that he is, everywhere that he goes, people reflect everything of themselves onto him. So people and their insecurities, they're insecure about money, for example. He was an average-looking guy. He didn't wear super fancy clothes. He came from money. He was a prince. He didn't wear anything crazy. He just wore average clothes. So when people that were dressed up and put all of their everything into their clothes, it was an insecurity that they had, essentially. They seen him not wearing fancy clothes. They got offended. They had all these different issues, accusations. Oh, are you poor? Are you trying to find your way here and there? Weird stuff. People that would lie all the time would see him telling the truth. They would assume that he was lying. They would think that he was lying when he was telling the truth. Because they themselves, it's an insecurity within themselves. So basically, I feel like Myshkin, if anything, was a mirror. And I wonder, in like an alternate, like a fictionized, fan-fictionized version of it, I wonder if you could make the case of Myshkin not even being a human or alive, just a floating mirror. In every room, doesn't say a word or anything, he's just a mirror there. Just to reflect everybody and everything. But this was a fantastic read. I really liked this book a lot. Something else too, I'm not sure if you guys are into Myers-Briggs personality tests, but the Myers-Briggs personality tests are pretty interesting to me. I like them. I think they're pretty cool. Myshkin was an INFJ, is what he was categorized as. So introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging. The weird thing with that is judging, because he wasn't judging, but they had to have something for the last letter out of this personalities. That is the same personality type that I have, which maybe is why it resonates so much. I definitely don't think I'm like Myshkin, in some ways for sure. But it is very interesting to look at, from like an actual human perspective, because of course it's a work of fiction. But to see in real life people acting like this, people that are INFJs, people that are close to the INFJ personality type, maybe be INFP or something like that. And it's pretty interesting to see, because there is something different about these people. They have like a very groundedness in their morality. So their ethics and their morality. And a lot of times they're very intrigued by the intellectual. They're very intrigued by the humans. But at the same time, a lot of these people tend to isolate, is what it seems like. I mean, and even in the case of Myshkin, towards the end, he isolated. Even at the very beginning, he didn't have a ton of friends or anything like that, or family even though he came from a royal family. So it is pretty interesting in that sense. What else is there about the book? He also did have another love. Myshkin had like another, I don't know if you'd say love though. Maybe love in a different sense. Regardless, he had another like interest that he was talking to, and it was Nastasia's sister, I believe. And she was the intellectual, but she was very prideful, but she was very intellectual. She ended up marrying somebody at the end of the book, instead of going with Myshkin, because at the end of the day, Myshkin thought that Nastasia had more going on, and he thought that he could help her more than he could help the other woman, and I can't remember her name. It's gonna bug me. I can't remember her name. But regardless, he ended up going to Nastasia because he was going after the lost sheep. Go after the one instead of the 99, and essentially she had like a lot of pride and intellectualism. She's like, I'm very learned, I'm very educated, a lot of ego, essentially, a lot of logos and a lot of ego. And essentially he just went with Nastasia. He ended up going with her instead. He backed out last second, but he did end up going back with Nastasia, and he just thought that he could help her. He seen her as more broken, and the fact that she couldn't accept any of the purity, essentially, that he was bringing, he thought, like, I can help her and fix her for this, and then if I can fix the part where she can't accept purity and can't accept grace, if I can fix that part, then she'll be good and on her way, and she won't need me or Rogozin. So yeah, it's just pretty interesting. It's a really interesting book, really interesting read. It is a long book. It is longer than Crime and Punishment. The version that I had of it, I think it was like 750 pages long. Not the longest book I've ever read, but some of the times I felt like it really meandered. Like, for example, the whole donkey thing, that was a long scene. That very much meandered. So if you're going to read this book, just be in it for the long haul. Know it's going to take quite some time to finish. But it is a good read. It's a really good read. I really like Crime and Punishment, and I really like The Idiot by Dostoevsky. I've read White Nights. That's a very quick read. I think it's about 100 pages. And Notes from the Underground I read as well. That one was a pretty good book too. But I don't know. It's just The Idiot and Crime and Punishment are like really, really good. Really, really, really good. Super deep, super religious, super philosophical, super psychological. Really fantastic reads. I really liked this book though, The Idiot. It's really, really good. Like I said, because I can somewhat, no, not 100%, but somewhat relate to the character. And it was just a really great read. It was a really, really good read. The book I want to read after this is I do eventually want to get to The Brothers Karamazov. That is the last of his biggest books, and then I want to finish up the rest of his short stories. But yeah, The Brothers Karamazov, I keep hearing Alyosha is a really cool character, and kind of resembles Prince Myshkin, so I am interested in that, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, The Idiot's just a really great book. I definitely recommend it. I would say go with Crime and Punishment first, and then go to The Idiot. And if you don't like Crime and Punishment, you're probably not going to like The Idiot. But I wouldn't go the opposite direction. I wouldn't. I would start with Crime and Punishment. It's a little bit shorter of a read. It is a lot darker compared to The Idiot. But The Idiot is just a great book. It really is a great book. And the ending is crazy. He just forgave him. He forgave, Prince Myshkin forgave Rogozin right there. And basically he went like mute and nonverbal the rest of his life after that because of all the trauma and all the weight of the world that he tried to carry and all of the corruption he's seen. He's seen how people tried to influence each other with money, with politics, with like blackmail to an extent. And it was just shocking to him because at his core, he thought that people were good, and he always believed that. He was always good, and he just wanted to help people and make the world a better place. And it's just crazy to see that ending. But it's a very fitting ending. I think that's the fitting ending. I think that's like the perfect ending for that book. What else is there to say on it? Let me double check with my reference sheet, see if I missed anything. Let me see. Yeah, I think I covered basically everything about it. Of course, the book and further explanations and analyses can go deeper and further and different perspectives of it. But this is my perspective and my review of the book, of Dostoevsky's The Idiot. And I'm blown away by it. It's a fantastic book. Highly recommend. I like it. So that'll do for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers. Peace.